Pat's Personal Portraits is about sports this time. And if we're going to talk about football, if we're going to talk about NFL football, college football, it doesn't matter what kind of football. If there's a pigskin, that's why we ask former All-American quarterback from Arizona State University, former All-Pro Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Danny White. I'm so glad you could join us because you had a very unique and special meeting with somebody that most of us haven't met. And that is the gentleman who is now in charge of Sun Devil football.
I did, and it was wonderful. I mean, I had a great time. He and I have crossed paths. I found out over and over again. He coached in Allen, Texas, where my son went to school, Allen High School. Coached at Rice. He's been in a lot of places, but
tell us who he is, because there aren't a lot of folks.
Coach Todd Graham is the new head coach at Arizona State University, and he has deep Texas roots. He's got an old school philosophy that I absolutely love.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when it comes to what it takes to make a successful team, as opposed to putting all the emphasis on athleticism, how fast, how big, how strong you are, he believes that players that there's an intangible power and chemistry in football, unlike any other sport, which I 100% endorse. People don't understand that within a locker room you can create a synergy. You can create an environment where ordinary athletes like myself can come and achieve extraordinary results. You can actually exceed your own potential. That was me. A long time ago with Frank Cush, he created that environment.
Well, you went to ASU to play baseball.
I did. I was a baseball player. I was 6'2", 175 pounds, just wanted to play shortstop. That's all I cared about. And Frank Cush instilled in me a love for the game of football that hasn't left. And then to have that compounded by 13 years with Tom Landry, pretty fortunate to have played for two coaches like that. But he's got a lot of Frank Cush in him in his approach. Now, it's a different day and age, and players are different today, and you can't go out with 2x4s and slap people with your whistle, on the back of the leg, and hamburger drills and Mount Cush and all the things that Frank Cush did.
But that was the way that Frank not only developed outstanding football players and outstanding football teams, but also the reputation that he had as one of the toughest college football coaches in America. And some people said too tough.
Well, maybe, but in my opinion, I would never have gotten. There were 60 of us on the freshman team when I got there. 6 of us were left as seniors. That's a 90%.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he ever hit you?
But all 6 of us,
yes.
As a matter of fact, he did.
Tell me.
Between my freshman and sophomore year, we were out at spring ball. And by the way, even though I was on a baseball scholarship, I missed baseball games to go to spring football practice. So that tells you who was in charge, right? So I threw a pass in spring ball, and it hit the ground in front of the tight end I was throwing it to, and he came over, and he hit me across the head. Now, I had on my helmet, right? I don't know how he didn't break his hand. But he slapped me across the head, and he started yelling at me and saying, "You weak-armed, skinny, no good for nothing. Who hired you? I ought to fire him," is what he said to me. And I said, "Well, Coach, you did." And he turned around and walked off.
What would happen in the average football program right now, whether it's Ohio State, Michigan, Syracuse, UCLA, USC? What would happen if that took place now?
Well, he'd be gone.
The coach would be gone?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't hit players, especially on film. That's what eventually got him fired, which was the darkest day in the history of ASU football. But yeah, he had a way of, and it was a way, whether he knew it or not. I don't know whether he actually knew what he was doing, but he was creating a bond between the players, even against him, that made us so united. He'd take us to Tonazona and run us up that mountain all together. He'd run us on circle drills. And that had a bonding effect that to this day, those players that played with me in the first 3 Fiesta Bowls are closer today than we've ever been. And that bond, I think, is what carried us to victories over teams that were much more talented and bigger and stronger than we were.
Okay, but if there haven't been many Cushes since then, and we've had winning seasons, we've had successful seasons, we've had a lot of seasons that were not so successful, is Todd Graham at this point now, because you've only met him the one time,
Yeah.
at this point, does he seem to be Cush-like?
Yeah.
Really?
He seems to be that. I mean, he's pretty dead set in how he's going to go about doing things.
Like what?
Well, some of the restrictions he's going to put on players in terms of the way they look, the way they dress, the way they travel, the way they go to class.
Well, you're not going to
which
get,
is a big
you're
deal.
not going to get some of the really talented
No, you're
kids
not.
to come here.
No, you're not, and that's the risk you take, and that's the trade-off. But he believes he can do it with the intangible effects of having like-minded guys that believe in his philosophy, as opposed to guys that can just step out on the field on Saturday night and just whip somebody. He's gonna have guys that are gonna play just as hard on the last play of the game as they do on the first play of the game. He's gonna have guys that are gonna fight to the death, and he's creating that kind of an environment, I believe. And you're right. I've spent 2% of the time I hope to spend with him to really get to know him, and he's saying all the right things. But I have no reason to doubt him that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. I really believe he will.
All right. The final question that everybody wants to know the answer to. This is it. Everybody's interested in Todd Graham filling the stadium. Everybody's interested in going back to maybe those 12-1 seasons, right? 10-2. How do you feel about the black uniforms? That's what people really want to know.
Well, I will answer that question with a question. Do the black uniforms make them better football players? If they do, I am 100% in favor of them.
So says Danny White. It's one of the reasons why we invited him to KTAR.com for one of Pat's personal portraits.